Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to a brand new video. Now today's video is going to be Darren Tills' next opponent. Now UFC London is coming up on the 16th of March and it's heavily rumoured that he's going to be on the card and more than likely the main event in that card, as he did UFC Liverpool this year just gone. So yes, it looks like he could be facing Jorge Masvidal. Now, it has been rumoured that he's looking to move up to 185 from the 170 division after missing weight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in UFC Liverpool after a very heavy weight cut. Obviously he did make weight for UFC 228 when he faced Woodley for the championship, which he did lose. Now, I believe he is fighting at 170 for his next fight, and I've come up with a different list and a top 5 of who I'd like to see Darren Till face at UFC London. Now, number 5, this is more of a MMA sort of dream matchup for someone from the UK, is Michael Bisping. Now, if he did move up to 185, the Liverpudlian Darren Till, I would love to see him face Michael Bisping. For UK MMA, it's almost a passing of the torch. Michael Bisping has been the number one for the past probably 10 to 15 years now, especially when he won the Ultimate Fighter and moved his ranks up to UFC, becoming the middleweight champion, of course, before losing to GSP in late 2017. Now, Bisping has become of the UFC correspondence team on UFC Fox and is now becoming a commentator in ESPN's coverage of the UFC this year. Now, how much commentating he would do, we don't know. But one thing we can say for sure is that he's kept himself very fit, he's kept himself healthy despite his eye injury, of course. Physically, he's in peak condition still, and he's still going on his long runs if you watch his Instagram. But of course, he hasn't said he's going to be fighting anytime soon, and I'm pretty sure 3 months is a little too soon for him, even though I believe he's got the fitness and the capability to do so. Now, I don't know if you're outside of the UK watching this, the rivalry that Manchester and Liverpool has as two cities. There's a Manchester United and Liverpool derby game in football, and that is very much the talk of the town when these two games happen twice a year or more if there's in cup games. So yes, having a fighter from Manchester and a fighter from Liverpool fighting it out, I can imagine the press conferences now and the media build up, the two going back and forth, because Darren Till is a very mouthy, very confident, very good with his words, as is Michael Bisping. Is very cocky, very confident within himself, got the bravado, of course, as you call it. So for me, seeing Bisping fight Darren Till in UFC in London, of course, in England, would be a fight that the English fans would very much admire and would probably go down as one of the ages. And as I said before, it would be passing the torch, from Michael Bisping to Darren Till, who's more than less going to be the one, or looks likely to be the one, who carries MMA in the UK for the next 5 years potentially. So yes, he has got a record of 31-9. Bisping, he did lose to Kelvin Gastelum in his last fight at UFC Shanghai. And it, of course, has been it's been over a year now. It's been about 14-15 months since his last fight. So he hasn't been in as often as Till has. I believe Till fought 3 times in Poland, in Liverpool, and of course in UFC 228 against Woodley. So Darren Till does have the sort of the fight activity that Bisping doesn't have, and of course an age factor in that as well. Now, moving on to number 4, we are keeping it English based. It's Leon Edwards, part of the 170 pound division, currently ranked 10 in that division as well. His last fight was in June 23rd, where he fought Cowboy Cerrone and did get the victory in that match. He won by a unanimous decision, and of course he's from Birmingham in the UK. Now, having, as I said previously, Bisping, an English fighter versus an English fighter in London, is something that's very appealing, and he hasn't fought within 6 months, so I believe March, if you're looking at training 3 months from now, that is a very possible date. Now, Darren Till is number 2 in the rankings, or number 3 in the rankings at welterweight. So if Leon Edwards is looking to move up, then that would be a good fight for him. Now, I do believe Darren Till has got the skills and capability. They both fought Cerrone with different outcomes. Both won, but Darren Till obviously finished him, whereas Leon Edwards had to go the full distance. Now, moving on to number 3, it is RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, again at 170. Now, he recently come off a loss against Kamaru Usman, who's fighting Woodley for the championship at UFC 235, it's rumoured. So And Darren Till obviously fought Woodley for the championship last. So it does make sense to make this fight. Number 3 up against number 5. And it'd be a close fight. Of course, Colby Covington beat Rafael dos Anjos over 5 rounds quite convincingly. So he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Darren Till on a 1-fight losing streak. And winning 2 of his last 3 fights. So it would be a good fight. It would be close. And very much like Bisping versus Anderson in London, it would be good to have an Englishman versus a Brazilian inside the O2 Arena. Now if Darren Till was to move up to middleweight, I'd put him up against Derek Brunson, and Derek Brunson takes our second position for the top 5 opponents that I'd like to see Darren Till face at UFC London if he is to fight there. Now Derek Brunson is ranked number 8 in the middleweight division, and I think if he's going to move up to the division, he's going to have to go through some competitors before he gets a title shot. And starting off with number 8, Derek Brunson, who recently lost to Israel Adesanya, who's now fighting Anderson Silva in February, would be a good place to start now. He did lose Brunson in that match in the first round with a TKO stoppage from the style bender, or the last style bender, should I say, give him his full nickname and his full respect. And yes, so he is on a losing streak at the moment. And I think Darren Till has the capabilities. He's a very tall, very broad person, a broad fighter, should I say. You saw him against Tyron Woodley in the build-up to that fight, absolutely towering over him. Didn't stop Woodley destroying him though, did it? Let's be honest. So yes, if he wants to move up to middleweight, I'd put him up against Derek Brunson. I would like to see Darren Till potentially face Chris Weidman, but I believe, 1, that's too soon for Weidman, who recently fought in November and has injuries. And 2, I think it's a bit soon to be putting him up against a Weidman, especially for a fight night main event. I think if we did get a Darren Till versus Weidman, it'd be on an undercard of a pay-per-view. So maybe that could happen in November or October, if that's the way that Darren Till decides to go. And finally, the last opponent, and at number 1 position, is Colby Covington. Now, Colby Covington has had a lot of press recently, slating the UFC for not giving him that title fight that one Darren Till got because of a nose injury, and he had an operation on that put him out of the dates that the UFC wanted. The UFC wanted Tyron Woodley to fight in September, and after a year layout, let's add. And Colby Covington fought RDA, beat him for the interim championship, and of course couldn't fight in September, wanted an October-November date, and the UFC said no. So Colby Covington is not very happy with that, and is more or less waiting for a Woodley fight. Especially now, Woodley's been given Till in September, beat him, and now has got Usman in UFC 235. So yes, Covington, quite rightfully so, as a number 1 contender and interim champ, should be pretty miffed by the fact that he's been snubbed almost, well, definitely twice now for the UFC championship belt. But he has brought himself a lot of controversy, supporting the likes of Donald Trump, and making that his whole sort of gimmick, being the bad guy, supporting Trump, and you know, make this whole UFC great again, make America great again gimmick that he's been using. So yes, he's very good with his talking, with his press conferences. He's very good on the mic, and I think him against Darren Till would be pretty much a pretty spectacular event, even before they stood inside the Octagon. Especially, can you imagine the press conference at UFC London, the sort of things come up with Darren Till, of course, that scouse bravado and confidence that he owns so well. I think those two, obviously number 1 versus number 3, and I think whoever wins that could potentially get a shot against Usman, against a winner of Usman or Tyron Woodley. Of course, if Tyron Woodley wins that one, it's hard to give Darren Till a rematch after how quickly the first one ended, but it is his first championship challenge as a fighter in the UFC, of course. So I believe, you know, you can have one and then maybe retrain and get a second one a year later. But I do believe Covington is the number 1 pick for me. Now, it could be Jorge Masvidal for the UFC and for Darren Till, but we'll find out in the coming weeks. Now, I am looking forward to UFC London. I'm looking to make that event live. It would be my first UFC event. I did want to make London and Liverpool last year, but unfortunately was financially unable to. But it is Derby Day that day, Man United versus City, St Patrick's weekend, and UFC London. So that for me is the 3 very good reasons to go down to London and watch UFC London. Darren Till hopefully headlining that card. The opponent, we're not sure as of yet. It won't matter if Darren Till's on that card. You know, to get a few thousand Liverpudlians down down in London for that, along with the Irishmen, along with the Mancunians, potentially if the derby goes the right way. But it will be a very good weekend. So yes, let me know who you'd like to see Darren Till fight next. Drop your comments below, also follow Cage Chat YT on the socials, links in the description, and subscribe, and go sting 'em.